Okay, chapter 5 is social attribution explaining behavior. And so this is the thought processes that we go through to explain why other people do something. So, what do we attribute to their behavior? Why did this person do this thing? Uh, I need to work through it to try to understand, maybe put myself in their shoes, try to get to the bottom of why someone else did what they did in a social situation. That is what social attribution is, and that is what we're going to talk about in this chapter. So we're going to infer the causes of other people's behaviors. So kind of one of the base definitions that we're going to go over this chapter is causal attribution. This is linking an event to a cause. So what is the event that caused someone to behave a certain way? Such as inferring that a personality trait is responsible for behavior. So maybe someone screamed out loud at the store because they like being the center of attention. That is a personality trait. They like to be dramatic, they like to be the center of attention. Or it could be that someone accidentally rolled over their foot with a cart. That could be another reason why they screamed out loud in the grocery store. But we're linking an event to a cause. It could be this person likes to be dramatic, this person likes to be the center of attention, so they made a loud noise in the middle of the store. Or you're linking an event to a cause. Someone rolled over their foot and hurt their foot, and so they screamed out loud in the grocery store. So you're linking an event to a cause. So when something happens to you, you try to decipher the cause of why it happened. So, for example, maybe the reasons someone rejected you for a date. So the reasons for getting rejected for a date. You may say, is it something about me? Is it something about them? Is it something that happened to them? Did something else come up? Did they decide not to do? Like, what is it? What happened? What event happened that caused them to reject you for a date? Okay, next, getting a good test grade versus a bad test grade. Maybe we're going to talk about this later in the chapter. Maybe if you get a good test grade, you're going to say it's because of you and you did good things. But if you get a bad test grade, you're maybe going to blame it on other things outside of yourself. Maybe, well, people are being distracting or the teacher didn't teach it well enough. Whatever that is, you're going to link an event to a cause. What caused a behavior to happen? Okay, so there's a few types of explanatory styles, how you explain why things happen and why people behave the way they do. So your explanatory style is a person's habitual way of explaining events, typically assessed along three dimensions: internal versus external, stable versus unstable, and global versus specific. So for internal versus external, your habitual way of explaining events is the cause is due to something about them or something about other people or circumstances. So what I just said about the test. So either if you do well on a test, it's because I studied really well, I worked hard, whatever that is. It's something about the person. That would be internal. My internal explanatory style is if someone says it's my fault, it's something that I did, whether it's good or bad. And then external is the cause is due to something that is outside of myself. It's because of someone else or another circumstance. I didn't do well on the test because I didn't have enough time to study, because the teacher didn't explain it well, because people are being distracting in the class. That is something outside of yourself. That is an external cause. Okay, the next is stable versus unstable. So stable means the cause will be present again in the future, and unstable says the cause will not be present again in the future. So I have a whole scenario on the next slide. And then global versus specific. The cause is something that influences other areas of your lives or just one. So we're going to bring a scenario. So let's say you're in biology class. Most people have to take biology as a general education credit for college. So let's say you're in biology and you have to do a presentation in front of the class. So I'm going to break down these 6 different explanatory styles, and what possible scenarios could be for each of them. So your presentation for biology goes poorly. So an internal explanation would say, I didn't do my best work. Okay, that's something that has to do with yourself. External would be, the class is not a good audience, so it's their fault. So you're putting the blame outside of yourself onto another person or circumstance. Okay, stable, which is something that's going to happen repeatedly in your life. You could say, I'm just not good at public speaking. It's not saying that you're stupid. It's not saying that I'm not good at public speaking in school, or I'm not good at public speaking for biology. This is something that's going to happen again and again in your life. Anytime you try to do public speaking, you're going to have a hard time. Okay. Unstable is something that is not going to happen again and again. And this is, I stayed up way too late working on this, so I wasn't able to do my best. That is probably a one-time thing. So it's an unstable explanation. Okay. And then next is the global versus specific. So global, so that's going to affect all areas of your life. And you could just say, I'm stupid. That's going to affect not just your biology class, not just your school work. It's going to affect all areas of your life. And then specific, it's dealing with this specific presentation. And so specifically, you could say, I didn't understand the assignment. So here I have the 6 ways broken down. There are definitely different explanations you could give for each of these, but these are just examples of maybe to help you understand what each of these are. So people's attributional style. So why and how they link causes to events has a powerful effect on long-term outcomes. So attributions for failure that imply controllability, such as a lack of effort or a poor strategy, make it easier to persevere because we can always try harder or try a new strategy. So if you feel like a situation is within your control to change, so say you fail at something, but you know that you feel like you can control the next outcome because now you know what you did poorly, and you can work from there and you can get better. So you said, okay, maybe I didn't try as hard as I should have, or I didn't have very good technique or very good strategy. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to figure out, I figured out what I need to do. I'm going to make it better over time. And so that makes it easier to work harder because you have a goal and you feel like you can, you know how to fix it, and you feel like you can fix it. You can be better. So if you feel like you have a sense of control over your life or over your situation, then it's going to make it a lot easier to try again and to try harder. Okay. If the outcome is beyond our control, it's simply to just give up. If you don't know what you did wrong, or you think that the outcome is not something you can change, then why try? Making people believe that they can exert control over events that they formerly believe to be beyond their control restores hope and unleashes the productive energy that makes future success more likely. So if you feel like a situation is out of your control, maybe that's why you gave up. Maybe that's, whatever sport or hobby you felt like, I don't know how to get past this. I feel like nothing I do can make this better. Maybe that's how you feel about school. Maybe take a step back and try to relearn or try to learn a different mindset. Is maybe not all of it's within in your control, but maybe some of it is. And so maybe those are areas that you can make progress, and maybe try different strategy, try different things to help create a better outcome. Okay, so what are the processes of how we link events to causes or causes to events? So only by knowing the cause of a given event can we grasp the true meaning of what has happened and anticipate what's likely to happen next. If we don't know why someone did something, we don't know the event that caused someone to scream out loud in the middle of the grocery store, well, then we don't know we don't know what just happened, and we don't know what's going to happen next. So say in that grocery store and someone is being loud because they like to be dramatic in the center of attention, you might see them running throughout the store and being loud and obnoxious, and they might knock some stuff over and might just be rude and all over the place. Okay, so if you didn't know that that was why they yelled out loud, then you're probably not going to anticipate what they're going to do next. Okay, so say that same person, instead of being loud and dramatic, they got their foot rolled over. Maybe what's going to happen next is they're going to be limping out of the store, and someone might get in trouble for hurting a customer. Okay, so you don't know what's going to happen next because you don't know what the cause of the event was. Okay, so for example, our perception of how much control another person has over his or her actions is one important factor in how we judge that person. If you hear someone being loud in a grocery store, you might roll your eyes and be like, ugh, why do people have to be so loud? Why, this is a place where I just want to do my grocery shopping in silence, and I want this to be a peaceful experience, but someone's being loud and obnoxious. Well, that makes me think poorly of them. Well, if they got their foot run over by a cart, well, then that's not their fault. You would probably judge the situation differently. You maybe judge them differently if you know that they just gotten hurt versus them being loud and dramatic. Okay, so another example that maybe you have come across is, let's say you're at sports practice or you're at your job or whatever, and your coworker or your teammate comes in 30-45 minutes late, and you think that they're lazy. You automatically assume that they're lazy, that the reason the event that occurred is their laziness that caused them to be late to work or to practice, when in reality they were stranded on the side of the road with a flat tire and had to call for help. If you would have known that they got a flat tire, and so that's why they're late to work or to practice, you're probably going to have a different judgment of them. You're probably not going to think they're lazy because the actual event that caused their behavior, them being late, was something outside of their control. So if you feel like someone can control a negative behavior, then you're going to think poorly about them. But if they cannot control their negative behavior, then you're probably going to show more grace. So keep this in mind, that behavior is always a function of both the person and the situation. It's a combination. Okay. Sometimes it's just a little bit the person, and not 1% the person and 99% the situation. And sometimes it's 1% the situation and 99% the person. It really just depends on the event that occurs. Okay, so next we're going on to the covariation principle. This is the idea that behavior should be attributed to potential causes that occur along with the observed behavior. So there's three types of covariation. There's consensus, distinctiveness, and consistency. These are ones that you're really going to need to remember the difference between. Wink, wink, you are going to be tested on this for sure, on the differences between these, being able to pick them out. Okay, so consensus is what would most people do in this given situation. Okay, distinctiveness is what an individual does in different situations. And then consistency is what an individual does in a given situation on different occasions. So let's say, I'm going to give an example that's going to go along with these A underneath 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so let's say there's someone named Mike in my social psychology class, in this class. And he's been telling his friends, man, I really like Mrs. Krause's social psychology class. I love it. I love this class. Okay, so first you're going to need a consensus. Okay, what do most people think about this class? Okay, people who have taken this class in the present or in the past, does everyone like this class? Yes or no? Okay, so that's the first question you're going to ask. For distinctiveness, you're gonna ask your friend or think about, does Mike like all psychology classes? So what does an individual do in think about different psychology classes? So different situations. Yes or no? Does Mike like all psychology classes, or is this the only psychology class that he's liked so far? And then lastly is consistency. What an individual does in a given situation on different occasions. So has Mike always talked well about this class, or was it just today that he said something positive? So we're going to use the covariation principle to define two different types of attribution. There's situational and dispositional attribution. Okay, so situational attribution is when consistency, consensus, and distinctiveness are all high. Everyone else, so you would say everyone else likes this class, so consensus is high. Yes, everyone else likes this class. Your friend typically doesn't like other psychology classes, so distinctiveness is high. It's distinct. It's set apart from other psychology classes. And he has praised, in previous semesters, I used a she. In previous semesters, he praised the class. All semester, he has praised the class all semester. So consistency is high. Okay, so the situation, that means that there's something about the situation. There's got to be something good about this specific class that makes it good. Okay. Next is dispositional attribution. So it's when consistency is high, but consensus and distinctiveness are low. So you would say so consistency is high. So consistency is your friend has raved about this class all semester, but consensus is low. So not everyone likes this class. Not many people like this class. And your friend typically likes psychology classes. So it's not distinct. It's not set apart. So if they're talking about it positively all semester, being consistent, but not other people don't like it, and he usually likes psychology classes, that means that your friend's fondness of the class must reflect something about them. Maybe they just really enjoy psychology. It's not that this class is something super spectacular. Okay. It's that there's something about Mike that makes him like the class. So is it the situation or is it the person? Okay. If it's the situation, that means that this class is just amazing. And so pretty much everyone's going to like it, and they're all going to talk about it and all going to love it. Okay. The disposition means that it's something about you, something that you like or don't like. Okay, so that's how we use the covariation principle to determine whether something is caused by the situation or something is caused by the person. Okay, next is counterfactual thinking. So this is another way that people link an event to a cause. So considerations of what might have, could have, or should have happened if only a few minor things were done differently. Okay, so we're thinking if the event had just changed the tiniest little bit, then the behavior or the outcome would have changed drastically. And this is a counterfactual thinking because we don't know what would have really happened. We don't know that the outcome or the behavior would have been that much differently. And I think a lot of us, whenever we're thinking of maybe about past mistakes or past regrets, we think, what if only I had studied for my test a little bit better, then the rest of my college would have been great. If only I wouldn't have gone to that one party. Now, there are some things that, could change your life pretty big if I wouldn't have done this or if I would have done that. But for the most part, considerations of what might or could have been or should have been if only a few minor things were done differently is counterfactual thinking, because we're not taking into account the rest of life that occurs around us and how little impact these minor things actually have been on our lives. Okay, next is emotional amplification. I want you to think about, let's say you're in a race. Okay, let's say you are running a race, and so you know that a tenth of a second, or let's say a full second, is a big difference. If someone beats you by a second in the 100-meter dash, that's a big difference. Okay, So keep that in mind. So let's say you're running a race and it's the state track meet and you're running the 100-meter dash and you come in second by 0.01 seconds. That is devastating. You are 0.01 seconds away from being a state champion. So you're devastated, okay? What if you got third place, but you were a full second behind second place? Is that devastating? As devastating as getting second place by 0.01 seconds? No, I don't think so. And that's what emotional amplification is. It's an increase in an emotional reaction to an event that is proportional to how easy it is to imagine the event not happening. So an emotional reaction tends to be more intense if the event almost didn't happen. So the question is, would you be more happy to win a bronze medal at the Olympics rather than a silver? So if someone won a bronze medal at the Olympics or got, third place, they placed in the top 3, so they got on the podium at the state track meet, well, they might just be happy that they placed, that they got third place, that they're getting a medal, that they're getting on the podium. And by a full second is a lot to change within a 100-meter dash. But someone that loses by 0.01 seconds, they think, if only my start had been just the tiniest bit better. If I would have, my breathing, my stride, my whatever had been just, it's so easy to imagine you being 0.01 seconds faster. A whole second faster, that's a lot of work. That's a lot that you have to change to change a full second on your time. But 0.01 seconds, that's devastating. Even though you would have placed higher, you might be a lot more content with getting third place and being behind by a full second than you would be getting second place and losing by 0.01 seconds. Think about if there's ever a time, not just in athletics, but any time where something almost happened or almost didn't happen, and it made it that much more emotional for you or devastating or whatever because it was so close. But if you wouldn't have been close at all, it would have been like, okay, it wasn't meant to be, or what have you. Okay, so how do we err and make errors in our attributions of linking, how do we make errors in linking causes to behaviors? How do we have biases in linking causes to behaviors? So the attributions people make are sometimes less than fully rational. Our hopes and fears sometimes color our judgment. We sometimes reason from faulty premises, and we're occasionally misled by information of questionable validity. So one way that this happens is through the self-serving attributional bias. So this is, we we may make our attributions from faulty premises. Maybe our hopes and our fears change how we link causes to events. And the self-serving attributional bias is the tendency to attribute failure and other bad events to external circumstances and to attribute success and other good events to oneself. And so that's when I was talking about internal versus external explanatory styles. And when someone does well on a test, they say it's because I did something good, because I studied, because I'm smart, because, whatever. So you're attributing success to yourself. But say you did poorly on it, well, then you're linking it to an external circumstance. Well, other people are being distracting. The teacher didn't teach me well enough. So that's why I included this comic on the slide. I thought it was funny, saying, first, I'd like to blame the Lord for causing us to lose today. It couldn't have possibly been my fault. It was God. There was a higher power out there that just did not want us to win. So it's not my fault. God made us lose. That's funny. But that's exactly what the self-serving attributional bias is. Had this number 87 had his team won, he probably been saying it's because of all the hard work that I did, because I made this many tackles and I blah blah blah. It really depends on what the outcome is. If the outcome is good, we like to thank ourselves, and if it's bad, we like to blame other people or other circumstances. So that brings us back to the beginning, the fundamental attribution error. This is the failure to recognize the importance of situational influences on behavior, along with the corresponding tendency to overemphasize the importance of dispositions on behavior. So we tend to think that the reason people do things is solely or mostly because of who they are, what they think, what they believe, and so we overemphasize that, and we underemphasize the importance of the influence that the situation has on our thoughts and our behaviors. And that's what the fundamental attribution error is the overemphasis of the personal and underemphasis on the situation that causes behaviors. So what are the causes of this fundamental attribution error? Why are people so quick to see someone's actions as a reflection of the person's inner traits and enduring character? By thinking that people get what they deserve or what goes around comes around, we can assure that nothing bad will happen to us if we are the right kind of person living the right kind of life. Well, that's faulty thinking because uh, we don't live in a perfect world where if you do good things happen to you. And if you're bad, bad things happen to you. That's not the way it goes. Sometimes great things happen to terrible people, and sometimes terrible things happen to good people. That's just the way the world is. But if you have this way of thinking that people only get what they deserve and what goes around comes around all the time, then that means that you are living by the just world hypothesis. This is the belief that people get what they deserve in life and deserve what they get. But what that doesn't take into account for are victims, are victims of crime, of abuse, of natural disasters, of whatever it is. Does that mean that they are terrible people, that they did terrible things to cause that to happen? Absolutely not. So the just world hypothesis is totally, totally, totally false. Attributions to the person have an edge over situational attributions in everyday casual analysis because people are usually more salient or stand out than situations. So we may see someone yelling at the waitress at a restaurant, and we automatically think that person is a terrible person because we're seeing their behavior, we're not seeing the situation. We may not know what is going on in the moment, what was going on 5 minutes ago, or what was going on earlier on in their day to cause them to act that way. So we tend to see people's behaviors and judge them based off of that rather than judging the situation. So when we observe someone's behavior, we automatically characterize the person as having a disposition corresponding to the behavior observed, just like I said. Only upon reflection do we consider the context of that behavior, and it's often too little, too late. Our assumption that the behavior is dispositional, so it's something about them, rather than situational, has been made. Even if we may realize that the reason the person's yelling at the waitress is because they've had a terrible day. Every single thing on their order was wrong, and someone got something that had an allergy. Someone said, I am deathly allergic to shellfish, and they got shellfish in their dinner anyway. And there's a lot of things that went wrong. I'm not saying that you should ever really yell at a waitress, but you maybe be a little bit more understanding and not be so judgmental towards that person if you knew all of the things that added up to that behavior, the linking the causes to the behavior, the event to the behavior. Maybe you would have a little bit more grace on someone. But once you take the time to reflect on that and say, you know what, I don't really know what's going on, your assumption of that person, your initial thought of that person is honestly the thing that's going to leave the impression on you. Is you saw them yelling at the waitress, you kind of think they're not really the best person. So what are some consequences of the fundamental attribution error? Does it matter that we're susceptible to the fundamental attribution error? What are some examples of how fundamental attribution can affect someone's life? So there are two reasons why people are so unaware and susceptible to the fundamental attribution error. One is we are not good at assessing the validity of our own judgments. We always think we're right. We do. We like to think we're right. And when we feel a certain way, we kind of go with it. We trust ourselves and we're like, yep, that's right. Even though we usually don't know the whole situation, we don't know the person, we don't know anything, but we think we're correct in our judgments. Two, we often see a given individual in only particular situations. So think about your professors. You usually don't see them outside of the classroom. You know who they are as Professor blah, 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 or Mrs. or Mr. blah, blah, blah. You know me as a voice through your screen as Mrs. Rachel Krause. That's what you know me as. You know how I behave on my computer screen, and that's it. You don't know how I'm like in my real life. You don't know what I'm like with my husband, with my dog, at work, at the store, with family, with friends. So you're judging me or judging your professors or judging whoever based on the person you know them to be in a given situation. So you don't know what they're truly like in all aspects of their lives. And so you are inaccurately judging them because you only know part of who they are. A lot to think about. This going through every semester that I go through this chapter, it reminds me to be a lot more gracious with people because I don't know their situations. And a lot of times I don't fully know who they are. I don't know why they make the decisions they do. I don't know why they behave the way they do because I don't truly know them. I may know some people in some contexts, but there's not that many people that I truly know well enough to understand exactly why they behave the way that they do in different situations. So think on that. So how does culture impact casual attribution? So most of the world's people tend to pay more attention to social situations and the people who are involved in them than Westerners do. Non-Westerners have to pay more attention to others and to the details of the situations they find themselves in because effective action typically requires coordinating their actions with those of other people because they are more intertwined on a day-to-day basis, emotionally, socially, financially. They are more tied up with other people, so they are typically having to coordinate their actions with those of other people. Non-Westerners are more inclined than Westerners to attribute an actor's behavior to a situation rather than to people's dispositions. Interesting. How does social class influence attribution? Social class is defined as the amount of wealth, education, and occupational prestige individuals and their families have. So we know what wealth is. We know what education is. What is occupational prestige? Occupational prestige is jobs that seem to be highly favored, like doctors and lawyers and biochemical engineers and those jobs that sound prestigious. So that's what occupational prestige is. So given that within a particular culture or ethnicity, people from different levels on the socioeconomic ladder arrive at very different casual explanations for events. So people with that come from different social backgrounds and economic backgrounds, they arrive at very different explanations for events. So lower class individuals resemble individuals from interdependent cultures in their attributional tendencies. So they tend to attribute an actor's or someone's behavior to a situation rather than the person's dispositions. However, those higher up the socioeconomic ladder tend to invoke dispositional causes. So that they also have different ways to explain why are some people rich and some people poor. They have different ways of linking the cause to the event, which is them being poor or being rich. Wealthy individuals were likely to endorse the belief that a person's standing in society is determined by genetic factors and a person's temperamental inclination to succeed or fail. Working class individuals are more likely to cite situational factors, saying, I didn't grow up with much money. I wasn't given many opportunities. I have been having to work against it. I'm trying to climb up the ladder. So wealthy individuals and not wealthy individuals, they have way different views of the world, typically. This is typically, and also have different reasons why they're rich and the others poor, and vice versa. It's